All right, so when factoring polynomials, what should be the first thing I should do in this problem? Okay, find the GCF. So there are three terms. What's the GCF of these three terms? 3. All right, what should I then do? Factor out the 3. Okay, so you're going to write this as 3 times in parentheses. Now there are 3 terms here, so you better have 3 terms inside the parentheses. And so the terms you write, and you can always check by distributing. So 3 times what is 3x squared? X squared plus 7x and then plus 10. Okay. Okay, now, am I done? Because I did write as a product of factors. I mean, I wrote this as a factor of 3, and then this is my other factor. No, because whenever you factor, you're factoring completely, which means that all your factors that you see, you better not be able to do anything else, meaning that the GCF of the polynomials should be 1. But if you look at this, I can factor this trinomial further. So you always got to check for this. So I'm going to write x squared plus 7x plus 10. So you're going to factor this as 2 binomials. Remember that? And so when I factor this, what's going to be the first terms here? Remember using the idea of FOIL. X and x, so x times x squared. Now go to the last, 10. So you want 2 numbers whose product is 10. 5 and 2, 10 and 1. What do you want to try? 5 and 2. So let's put the 5 here, the 2 there. It does not matter. The last sign's positive, so we talked about that. The last sign's positive. That means that in order for me to get a positive 10, these have to both be the same sign. And when we talk about the outer and the inner better give me the 7x, right? So if these are going to be the same sign and I want a positive 7x, and that means both of these signs in here better be positive. All right, and before we go on, let's check those. So let's check the outer and the inner. The outer is 2x. The inner is 5x. And when I add them up, I get 7x, which is what you wanted. All right, so then the answer becomes, what do I write? 3. Don't forget to bring down the GCF times these 2 binomials. X plus 5 times x plus 2. And remember, so if you look at this, I factor this trinomial into 3 factors as a product of 3 factors. What are the 3 factors? 3 is the first one. What's the other one? X plus 5, and the other one is x plus 2. Okay, now, as we go into the next section, it's going to be important that you ask yourself, if I look at x plus 5, this binomial, what's the GCF? 1. Okay. If I look at this binomial here, what's the GCF? 1. All right. And this is a monomial, so we don't tend to worry about monomials here. And we always put the monomial in front. Remember, monomial is just a term that doesn't have an operation like addition or subtraction. So these are monomials. These are examples of monomials. So like 5x, comma, 2x squared, those are examples of monomials. 7xy, the only operations you see is multiplication. That's it. You could also have xy divided by m. All right, so those are monomials. The only operation you see is multiplication division. If you see a addition, something like 2x plus 3, see where you have that addition symbol? That's no longer a monomial. What kind of polynomial is this? It's a binomial. Okay? And so if you have something like 1/2 x squared plus 7x plus 2, that's a trinomial. All right. Now, whenever we talk about polynomials, though, I need to mention this. Whenever we talk about polynomials, you can't have any variables in the denominator. So, see this right here, where that m, if I'm talking about a polynomial, then I should not have an m in the denominator. So I'm going to just go ahead, since we are talking about polynomials here, let's go ahead and make that a 5. So xy divided by 5. So anyway, so those are all examples of monomials. This is an example of binomial. This is an example of trinomial. All right. So I have a monomial times 2 binomials. So that's number 1. Okay, number 2, you have, let's say you had 2r squared minus 16r plus 30. So 2r squared minus 16r plus 30. What are you going to do? Okay, right, so what's the GCF? 2. So you can factor out a 2. And what do I write? 2 times r squared minus 8r plus what? 15? Okay. All right, am I done? No, you want to try and see if you can factor this trinomial. So go off to the side and determine if you can factor this. So I have r squared minus 8r plus 15. So the 2 binomials. The first term is r squared, so that's the easy kind, because the only possibilities that could go here would be r and r. The last term is 15. That's also not too bad, because there's only 2 possibilities for a product of 15. What are they? 5 and 3, 15 and 1. Which one do you want to try? 5 and 3. So let's put the 5 here, 3 here. Last sign is positive. What does that indicate about these signs in here? They have to be the same sign. And they both have to be what? Negative. That's the only way you can get a negative 8r. And if you check it, you'll see that's true. What's the outer? 3r. What's the inner? And when I add them up, what's a negative 5r and a negative 3r? Negative 8r, which is what you wanted. So therefore, the answer becomes 2 times, tell me what you put, r minus 5 times r minus 3. Could someone else had said 2 times r minus 3 times r minus 5? Yeah. Multiplication is commutative. The order in which you multiply does not matter. But again, we preferred that the monomial factor be listed first. Okay, also, we're going to always put the monomial factor first. All right, number 3. Suppose you had 3b squared minus 3b minus 36. So 3b squared minus 3b minus 36. So what are you going to do first? Okay, find the GCF. What's the GCF? 3? All right, so the GCF is 3, so what's the next thing you're going to do? Say it again? Factor it out? Okay. So how are you going to factor that?
3 times b squared minus b squared.
All right, so 3 times b squared minus b minus 12. All right. Okay, so then what? You're going to, that trinomial, you're going to see if you can factor that trinomial. So I have b squared minus b minus 12. So we're going to see if we can factor this as a product of 2 binomials. What are the possibilities with the first terms? B and b. All right, now, this last term that's in the trinomial is really a negative 12, but let's just deal with 12 for right now. What are the possibilities for 12? 6 and 2. So factors of 12, 6, 2, 4, 3, 1, 12. All right, which one do you want to try first? 4, 3. Okay. So if someone, let's say, had tried 6, 2, because it's going to happen where you're going to try something doesn't work right away. That's fine. So let's put 6 here, 2 here. Okay. Now let's talk about the last sign. The last sign is negative, right? So that means that these signs in here have to be different. All right, let's suppose you don't know which one it is right away. But with practice, you tend to get better at this and you tend to recognize what it should be. So let's suppose you said, all right, I'm going to make this a plus symbol and this a minus symbol. All right, let's check it. What's the outer? What's the inner? And when I add them up, what do I get? That's not what I wanted. All right, so then you might say, well, I'm going to just change the signs. Well, that's not going to help you either, because changing the signs would just make this, instead of a positive 4b, it'll make it a negative 4b. So that indicates that 6 and 2 are not the ones I'm going to need. So what are you going to try next? 4 and 3? Okay, so let's try 4 and 3. So B. B, that's a B. All right, so let's try 4 and 3. All right, so then you might say, and there are different ways you can approach this, but then you might say, all right, I'm going to make the 4 positive and the 3 negative, because that's the only way I can get a negative 12, right? If one's positive, one is negative. So let's say this is plus 4, and this is minus 3. Before you go on, you need to check. Make sure that's correct. It may or may not be correct. What's the outer? What's the inner? Positive 4b. When I add them up, what do I get? A positive b. But that's not what I wanted. What I want? Negative b. So those are just opposites here. This is what I have. This is what I want. That means I just got to do what to these signs? Change them. So the answer should be, instead of b plus 4, I'm going to say b what? Minus 4. And instead of saying b minus 3, I'm going to say b plus 3. And again, check it. The FOIL. B times b? B squared. Let's go to the last. What's the negative 4 times the positive 3? Negative 12. All I got to do now is just check the outer and the inner. What's the outer? 3b. The inner? And when I add them up, what do I get? Which is what you wanted. All right, so then the answer becomes 3 times b minus 4 times b plus 3. Okay? All right, so that was number 3. All right, now let's look at this problem. Okay, number 4. Suppose number 4, okay, let's do number 4. Suppose in number 4, I have this. All right, I have x squared plus 4y, 4xy, that's an xy, 4xy, minus 12y squared. All right. Not that difficult. It's the same idea you've been doing, except instead of having just one variable, you now have what? 2. Okay, no big deal. Remember, as always, you're supposed to look for the GCF. What's the GCF of this polynomial? 1. GCF is 1. So then it's a trinomial, right? So then you're going to go and see if you can factor this 2 binomials, just like you've been doing. 2 binomials. All right. So first times first gives me that first term here. So what's the only possibility? X and x. All right, now you'll notice the y squared. So that means, remember, this last term times this last term gives me this, right? So that tells you that in terms of the variable, both of these better have what in it? A y. That's what that means. Y gives you y squared. So all you gotta do now is just deal with that negative 12. That's really what you're doing. So in essence, if you know that this is a y and a y, then take out the y here, and basically what's happening, if you want to look at it that way, is you're really factoring this. That's what you're doing. All right. So you took care of the variable, so you know that this has to be both x's and this has to be both what? Y's. So now just look at everything else. What are the possibilities for 12? The factors of 12. Now, although it's negative, let's just look at it in terms of 12. Factors of 12 would be 1, 12, 3, 4, 6, 2. All right. Now, what do you want to try? All right. So most of you recognize right away what should work. So 6, 2 should work. Not 4, 3, 6, 2. So let's put the 6 here, the 2 here. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Now remember, the last sign's negative, right? So what does that mean about these signs in here? They have to be different. So let's say this is positive, this is negative. Doesn't work? I'll try something else. But check it now. Check it. What's the outer? What's x times a negative 2y? Yeah, and always put in alphabetical order. So negative 2xy, right? What's the inner? Positive 6xy. Are these like terms? Yes. So what's 6 minus 2? 4. So what's 6xy minus 2xy? And is that what you wanted? Yeah. So there's your answer. Now again, before we go on, because that's going to be important in the next section, before we go on, ask yourself, now, how many factors do you see? 2. All right. If I look at that first factor, what's the GCF of the first factor? 1. What's the GCF of the second factor? 1. All right, so we're fine. Number 5. All right, suppose number 5 you had this. Suppose you had x squared plus 13xy plus 36y squared. So x squared plus 13xy plus 36y squared. What's the GCF? 1. So what do I write then? What's the next step? Try to see if you can factor it as 2 binomials. Okay, that will be the next step. Now this is an x squared right here. The first term is x squared, so that makes this part easy. What should be the first terms of each binomial? X. All right. In terms of the y squared, then the last terms of each binomial better have y's. So always think like that. Now, I want, though, the last terms here to have a product that's 36y squared. So let's look at the factors of 36. 136, 6, what else? 9, 4, 2 and 18. And I think that's about it, right? What do you want to try? 9 and 4? Okay. You know 6 and 6 won't work. Let's suppose you tried 6 and 6. Try it. Say 6, 6. Now let's talk about the signs now. The last sign's positive. What does that imply by these signs in here? They have to be the same, and it's going to be that middle sign. So what should both of them be? Positive. All right, now let's check the outer and the inner. What's the outer? 6xy. What's the inner? And we add them up, what do you get? Is that what you wanted? No. So obviously 6 and 6 will not be the ones that you will use. So what are you going to try next? 9 and 4? Okay, so let's do this again. Let's do 9 and 4. So x, y, 9, 4. All right, now the last sign's positive. That's the easy kind when the last sign's positive. It indicates that both of these signs have to be the same and it's a middle sign. What are they? Positive? All right, now let's check. Check to make sure this is correct. What's the outer? 4xy. What's the inner? And when I add them up, what's 9xy and 4xy? 13xy. Is that what you wanted? Yeah, so you're done. There's your answer. Okay. All right, number 6. Number 6. Suppose you had x squared minus 8xy plus 7y squared. So x squared minus 8xy plus 7y squared. And the more you do this, the quicker you become. So at this point, almost all of you should be able to tell me what the factors are, what the factorization is. What is it? Okay, but go ahead and tell me what the 2 binomials would be. You would say what? X plus y, okay, times. You said x plus y, right? Okay, so x minus y. Okay, x minus y times what?
X minus 7.
Yeah, so let's see. You're saying this. So you know this has to be x, x, this has to be y, y, right? There's only one possibility for 7, guys, because 7's prime. What is it? 1 and 7, right? So let's put the 7 here, the 1 there. Now I'm not going to put the 1 because the coefficient is understood to be a 1. All right. Now the last sign's positive. What does that mean by these signs in here? They're the same and they're both negative. Good. You know they can't be both positive because if you do the out and the inner, you're going to get a positive middle term. What kind of middle term do I want? Negative. All right, check. What's the outer? What's x times a negative y? Negative xy. What's the inner?
Negative 7xy.
And what's a negative 7xy and a negative xy? Negative axy, which is what you wanted. Okay? Any questions? All right, let's try this one. Number 7. Suppose in number 7 you had m squared plus 13mn plus 40 n, that's an n squared. So m squared plus 13mn plus 40n squared. All right. So first thing you should always do, GCF. What's the GCF of those 3 terms? 1. All right. What's the next thing? Factored as 2 binomials. Okay. What's the only possibility for the first one? M and M. Now remember, I have 2 variables in this problem, so the last term is an n squared. The only way I can get an n squared if both of these last terms here have n in them. Now that's a 40 though, so I got to have these 2 terms here to have a product that's a 40n squared. So there's several possibilities. So let's look at the factors of 40. There's 140, 220, 410, 5, 8. That's about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to, yeah, I have 10, 4. All right, that's about it. What do you want to try first? 5 and 8. All right, so let's put 5 here, 8 here, does not matter. The last sign's positive, so what does that indicate by these signs in here? They're the same, and they're both going to be positive. All right, now check. What's the outer? 8mn. What's the inner? 5mn. When I add them up, what do I get? Which is what you wanted. So this is correct. Okay? All right. Now, for about 3 minutes, I'm going to give you a couple of problems I want you to work on. See if you can get them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this. No, number 8, that's on here. Number 8. All right. Now, we did one like the one I'm about to do. I just want to see if you remember what to do. So we have 50 minus 15n plus n squared. So there's one like that on the worksheet. Just want to see if you have an idea of how to approach this. Put in descending order. Okay, that's a good idea. Most students tend to be able to do better with these when the square term's listed first. So let's put in descending order. What would this be in descending order?
N to the second minus 15n plus 50.
Okay, so n squared minus 15n plus 50. All right. And then you look for the GCF. What's the GCF? 1. So I'm going to go directly to 2 binomials. What are the possibilities of the first terms? N. In fact, that's the only possibility. Now for 50, let's look at the factors of 50. There's 150. Obviously, that's not the one you're going to need. 5 and 10, okay. There's 2 and 25 and so on, right? But obviously, for quite a few of you, you knew it was going to be 5 and 10. So let's try 5 and 10. So 5, 10, the last sign's positive. These signs have to be the same. They're both what? Negative. Now again, before you go any further, before you say that's the answer, check it. What's the outer? Negative 10n, or depending on how you wrote it, it could be negative 10n, or yours could be negative what? 5n. But when I add them up, what's a negative 5n and negative 10n?
Negative
15n, which is what you wanted. All right, so there's your answer. Okay, number 9. All right, number 9, let's suppose in number 9, I had this. Number 9. All right, suppose I had x squared plus 10x plus 25. So x squared plus 10x plus 25. GCF is 1. Okay, so I'm going to go and factor as two binomials. Now remember, if you exhaust all possibilities and nothing works, what's going to be the answer you're going to write? Prime. You're going to say it's prime. So XX is the one that you're going to say for that one, so that one wasn't too difficult. Now what about the 25? What do you want to try? 5 and 5, okay. And the last sign's positive, so these signs have to be the same, and they're both going to be positive. All right, again, let's check. Let's do the FOIL. First times first, x times x is x squared. Let's go directly to the last. 5 times 5 is 25. Now let's do the outer and the inner. The outer is 5x. The inner is 5x. When I add them up, I get 10x, which is what you wanted. Now, so in the answer where it says the blank, you can either say one of two things. You can say x plus 5 times x plus 5, or good, x plus 5 squared. All right. Okay. One of the problems on my math lab and one of the problems on the worksheet is going to say this now. So I'm going to go ahead and write this down. You have negative n squared plus 8n plus 72. Now, in all the problems we've done, last class period and today, the squared term had a positive coefficient. The coefficient here is a positive 1, isn't it? The coefficient in number 8 for n squared was a positive 1. Coefficient number 7 for m squared was a positive 1. So they were all positive. But now I'm at a situation in number 10 where the coefficient of n squared is a negative number. Most students don't like dealing with n squared having a coefficient that's negative. So on the worksheet in my math lab, they're going to ask you to do this first. So right now, you say the GCF is what? 1. Well, 1. Okay, 1. You can say 1. But what they're going to tell you to do, though, is they're going to say factor out a negative 1. So first, factor out a negative 1. That's the hint they're going to tell you. So before you factoring this, factor out a negative 1. So first, factor out a negative 1. All right, so that means this. That means we're going to say negative 1 times a trinomial. Negative 1 times what is a negative n squared? N squared, right? Not negative n squared, because a negative times a negative is a positive, but I wanted a negative. So that has to be n squared. Negative 1 times what is a positive 8n? No, that's an 8, not 4. Where you get negative 4n? That's an 8n. So minus 8n, right? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. A negative 1 times what's a positive 72? Negative 72. All right, so that's where I'm at. So in this case, we're going to say the GCF is a negative 1 instead. Now, just like before, when you factor out the 2 in a previous problem, when you factor out the 4 in a previous problem, you looked at that trinomial that you saw, and what did you try doing at that point? You tried factoring. So I went off to the side and I wrote out this trinomial. And then I factored. So what are the possibilities for n squared? N. All right, let's talk about, now this is a negative 72, but let's just look at 72. What are the factors of 72 that you want to try? Use your calculator if you need to. Give me two numbers whose product is 72. All right, 8 and 9. That's the one that's going to work, right? Or no? No, that doesn't work. All right, so someone said 8 and 9. So let's try it. Let's put 8 here, 9 here. Last sign's negative, right? What does that mean by these signs in here? They're different. So let's say this is positive, this is negative. Okay? What's the outer? What's the inner? When I add them up, what do I get? Negative n, and that's not what I want. I wanted a negative 8n. Even changing the sign is not going to work. So 8 and 9 are another ones I'm going to use. So let's go back and talk about this now. Let's talk about the factors of 72. Factors of 72. So 9 and 8 are two factors of 72. 9 times 8 is 72. That's not going to work. Give me some other factors. 2 and 37. All right, let's talk about 2 and 37. So really, just take your calculator, say 72 divided by 2. You get 37, don't you? But that's not going to work either, because if you put that in here, the on the inner is not going to add up to be a negative 8. Okay? So let's try. Let's try. 18 and 4. All right, so what she did was she took 72, and then let's go ahead and divide by 3 first of all, see if that's going to help. So 3 and 24, right? Okay, so there's 3 and 24. Is that going to help us? No. Then we're going to say 72 divided by 4. 72 divided by 4 gives me 18. So 4 and 18. That's not going to help either, because if you put that in there, it's not going to work. So then we try 72. Oops. Keep on going. 72. Now you know you're not going to try 5, because in order for a number to be divisible by 5, the last digit has to be 0 or 5. Okay? So I'm not going to use 5. Let's try 6. 72 divided by 6. I get 12. So 6 and 12. That's not going to work either. So then we try 72 divided by, let's do 7. Is 7 a factor of 72? No, because that needs to be what kind of number? A whole number. 72 divided by 8. We already did that one. That was because that was 8 and 9. 72 divided by 10 is not going to work. 11 is not going to work. Let's try 12. You get 6, right? Which you already did. 6 and 12. 72 divided by 13. Nope. 72 divided by 14. Nope. 72 divided by 15 is not going to work, because it would have to be divisible by 5. 16? No. Nope. 72 divided by 8. 17 won't work. 18. Okay, so 4 and, what did I say, 18?
18.
All right, is that going to help? No, it's not going to help. Okay, you think it's prime?
Yes.
All right. You need to always go halfway to 72. So I did 18, 19, 20, 21. Let's try 21. Nope. 72 divided by 22. Nope. All right, so it looks like, all right, it looks like this is all I can do. All right, that looks like what I can do there. Okay? No. Okay, because they wanted you to first factor out a -1, so you had to do that first. All right. But So in this case, you see I've exhausted almost every possibility I could think of. So in this case, number 10, they asked you to factor out -1, so you did something. You factor out -1, so that's all you can say. Now, her question was this: do you write prime? I would have written prime if it was something like number 11, n squared minus 8n minus 72. It was that.
Oh.
Because the GCF is 1.
Uh-huh.
And in that case, we tried all possibilities, so you would say prime. Okay, I actually want to do one where it works. So let's do number 12. Let's look at number 12. Suppose in number 12 you had this. All right, let's suppose you had negative v squared plus 4v plus 12. So write this one down. Negative v squared plus 4v plus 12. All right, so you see that v squared is negative? Let's go ahead and factor out a -1 first. Factor out a -1 first. So when I factor out -1, what do I get? Minus 12? All right. Now let's go off to the side and see if I can factor this trinomial further. So number 10, it was not possible because I've tried so many possibilities and nothing was working. So it turns out that I couldn't factor this any further. So if it was by itself like this, then you would just say prime. All right, let's go off to the side and see if I can factor v squared minus 4v minus 12. 6 and 2, y'all agree?
Yeah.
All right, so v, 6, 2. The last sign's negative. What does that imply by these signs in here?
Means that they're the opposite.
They're different, okay? Now, is the answer going to be plus 6 and a minus 2?
No.
No.
Why not?
Because that would leave you with positive.
Okay, good. Because if you did put a plus 6 and a -2, check yourself. What's the outer?
Negative.
-2v. What's the inner? 6v. And when I add them up, what do I get?
Positive
4v. But what did I want?
Negative.
-4v. So all since what I have and what I want are just different by a sign, that just says I just change the signs in here. So the answer should be v minus 6 times what? V plus 2. And then again, just double check. You have time. Do the out and the inner. The outer is 2v. The inner now is a negative 6v. And we add them up, what do you get?
Negative 4v.
Which is what you wanted. But the answer you're going to give me has to say what? -1 times these two binomials. So v minus 6 times v plus 2. Okay? Now the one on a test, I'm not going to ask you to factor out -1, so it'll be a positive coefficient. But on the worksheet, there is one where it asks you to factor out -1, and same thing for my math lab. All right, now let's do one more with this. Let's look at number 13. Okay, number 13. Let's suppose in 13, I had this. All right, suppose I had suppose I had a squared b plus 4ab squared minus 5b cubed. So write this down, a squared b plus 4ab squared minus 5b cubed. What are you going to do? GCF? What's the GCF? What is it? Not 1. B. There's a B in every term, right? So you better say the GCF is B. How many factors of B are here? 1. How many factors of B are here? 2. How many factors are here? 3. So how many do they have in common? Just 1. So you're going to say b times, all right, now what's going to go here?
A squared
A squared
plus 4A.
plus 4ab, good, because if you check it using distributive property, b times 4ab, b times 4ab is 4ab squared, which is what this is. And then minus 5b to the second. All right, so that's where we're at, okay? All right, now, am I done? No, because you have that trinomial that's in the parentheses, and you got to check. You must check to see if I can factor this as two binomials. Okay, so let's check that. So I have a squared plus 4ab minus 5b squared. So let's check this. What do you think will be the first terms in here? A and A. All right, now I have a b squared, right?
Yeah.
So b and b. And let's talk about the, it's a negative 5, but let's talk about the 5. There's only one possibility for 5.
Negative 5 and 1.
5 and 1. All right, so let's put 5 here and the 1 here, although I'm not going to write it because it's understood to be a 1.
I have a question. Is it okay if we still write it just for us, our memory?
Yeah, that's fine, but in the answer, kind of, we prefer that it not show the 1
Okay.
if it's a coefficient. Now, it's not wrong. I'm not going to mark it wrong, but it looks better if the 1's not there.
Okay.
The last sign's negative. What does that mean about these signs in here? They're different. Now, I'm hoping that all of you will be able to look at this and tell me which one do you think is going to be the positive, which one's going to be the negative?
5 and 1.
5, yes. And the reason why they thought that was because of this. Now, look. Let me go ahead and write this over. All right. So in your mind, you know this. You had an A, a 5B, an A, and a B, right? And without putting the signs in, you know that the outer, what's the outer that I have here? AB. Without putting the signs in, what's the inner? 5AB. The larger of these has to take that middle sign. So 5AB has to be what? Positive, and AB has to be negative, because that's the only way you can get a positive 4AB. Because what's 5AB and a negative AB? 4AB. All right. So that's what you do in your mind. That's really the way you're thinking. So therefore, if I want the inner to be a positive 5AB, then this has to be a plus symbol, and this has to be a negative symbol or minus symbol. Okay? And so that's going to go here. So I'm going to say B times A plus 5B times A minus B. Okay? All right, now, so I'm going to give you the worksheet that goes with this. I want you to try a couple of problems, and then we'll move on to something else.